People who lost their jobs by going off on a customer, what is your story? I didn't say this, but I saw it happen. Working at Burger King many years ago, I was working the drive-thru register, which was close enough to the front register that I could hear conversations. One of my coworkers was taking an order from a lady who kept asking how much her total was, and then canceling food on it and changing her mind. I guess she was trying to keep under a certain dollar amount. Well, at the Burger King I worked at, any canceled food on an order needed a manager's password, thanks to one a-hole who stole money by putting in someone's order, telling them the total, and then canceling out the order and pocketing the money. So the manager had come by 3 or 4 times at that point. This was during dinner time, mind you, so there was a line of customers out the door waiting to order. Finally, my coworker pulled out a pad of paper and a calculator. He started writing this woman's order down and totaling it out by hand. The woman asked why he was doing that, and he told her, "When you make up your mind about what you want, then I'll put it in the register." This pissed off the lady, so she grabbed the notebook and tried to hit my coworker with it. He snatched it back from her and told her, "Get the F out." My manager was only going to write him up for it, since the manager agreed that the lady absolutely deserved it, but my manager had to follow company policy. But he already had 2 write-ups on file, so she had to fire him. You know, we've read a lot of stories about crazy, entitled people on this channel, so now it's time to have some satisfying stories of finally going off on these people. Many a year ago, I worked at a home improvement store called Menards. I was a cart pusher, which was nice as I was outside all the time. Anyway, we gather about 25 to 30 shopping carts together and push them up to the entrance where they are stored inside. Now, to get them there, we do have to cross the main drive of the parking lot in the front of the store. We always stop and let customers drive by. So as I push the carts up, I stop because I see a guy in a pretty nice SUV. He's actually stopped in front of the entrance. Maybe he dropped someone off, I don't know. So I'm waiting to see if he drives off, and then he looks at me and waves me across. Looks like he wanted to finish a call he had gotten or something. So I wave back and start pushing the carts across. I'm on the other side when something clips me across the shoulder blades, and it stung somewhat and pushed me forward. And at the same time I heard glass shatter. I turn around and the guy in the SUV clipped me with his side view mirror. It had swung closed and shattered the window in the door, and I'm standing there wide-eyed. 2 seconds later the guy gets out of the car, swearing up a storm at me how I'm a low-life piece of crap, and how I'm going to pay for a new window, and that I'm not going to get anywhere in life because I broke his window. Now, I'm the type of person that if I was the reason, then I'll take the blame and fix the problem. But this guy hit me. I blew up on him for about 5 minutes before a manager finally had the guts to come over and pull me away. I didn't have to pay for a new window as it was on video, but I lost my job because we are not supposed to yell and cuss at the customer. You know, I'd love to see somebody go to court and try to pull the argument of, this guy was right in front of me when I decided to start driving and then he made me hit him. It wasn't me, but I've been told about it. Some guy just passed his training for a call center, and a few days in, he answered the phone to a customer and they got into an argument. The argument goes on for nearly an hour, and when the customer hangs up, the guy calls him back to continue the argument. The guy was in his late 50s and lost his job very quickly after. See, I don't really understand the whole appeal of wanting to just argue with somebody about anything for that long. Like, what could you possibly fight about for over an hour straight and like, you're so into it that you need to call him back to finish it? Not me, but my mother. She was working at an upscale cocktail lounge in Arlington, Virginia, just out of college. Fancy place, all DC businessmen. It was common for large groups of men to come in and get absolutely wasted. One night, a guy decided, after a few cocktails, that it would be hilarious to untie the wrap skirt that was part of her uniform. Bad idea. My mother was furious and dumped an entire tray of martinis on his head. She was promptly fired, but still thinks it was worth it. Yeah, I feel like that's bound to happen sooner or later in places like that. I used to work at a pizza place in a small town when I was a teenager. One night, I took a phone order from some idiot woman. It went like this. I say, "Thank you for calling pizza place. May I take your order?" "Yes, I'd like a large pizza, half pepperoni, half sausage, and half black olives." I say, "Okay, did you want the toppings combined or separated?" "No, I want half pepperoni, half sausage, and half black olives." "Okay, so you want 1/3 pepperoni, 1/3 sausage, and 1/3 black olives?" "No, I want half pepperoni, half sausage, and half black olives." I say, "I understand the toppings that you want, but I'm not understanding how you want us to put the toppings on your pizza. Do you want them separated by thirds, combined together, or do you mean put half of the amount that we usually put on?" "What's so hard to understand? I want half pepperoni, half sausage, and half black olives." I say, "Lady, there's only 2 halves to a pizza." She says, "I want to speak to your manager." I got fired on the spot. It was easier for the manager to just hire another person than it was to lose a customer in a small town. Oh, and the lady wanted the toppings divided into thirds. She told the manager the same thing, and he just went with her math. This lady also got it for free. Isn't that the justice we were all looking for? But I don't really understand his reasoning of, it's easier to find a new employee than it is to find a new customer. I lost my position at a vet clinic. Story goes like this. A woman brought in her 5-year-old dog that had diarrhea for the past week and was untreated for it. She was tired of the dog messing in the house. So instead of having the dog treated for the condition, she decided that she would just rather have the dog put down. I proceeded to call her a dumb bee while explaining to her the responsibilities that are involved when you decide that you want to have a pet. I was fired. I never looked back. You know, there are good pet owners out there who, when a problem shows up, they want to get it fixed. There are bad pet owners that when the problem shows up, they just take them to the pound. And I don't even really know what you would call it when they just decide, yeah, let's just kill the pet. I have a speech impediment, and back when I worked at Starbucks, this young African-American kid would come in every day after school and order a caramel frap. Every time I told him it would be $3.50, he would laugh uproariously and ask me to say it again. After a few weeks of this, he'd start bringing in his buddies as well. Each one would order the exact same drink, then ask me to keep repeating the price for them again and again. After a few months, I broke down. You boys should know how much the drink is by now. My manager overheard and claimed I was being racist by calling them you boys, even though they were all middle school age. Anyways, I still see the kids around town, and they always shout at me, "How much are those caramel fraps again?" "Now I told you, Loch Ness Monster, I ain't giving you that $3.50. My sister was the manager of a women's clothing store. At the time, she was dealing with some personal issues regarding depression and anxiety, so she wasn't in the greatest state of mind to begin with. A customer came in with a pair of pants that had ripped all along the inner thigh seams, which were all past the return period and had clearly been worn and washed. The customer, who was a larger woman, went off on the sales associate, stating that she'd only tried the pants on, and that caused the seams to rip, and she wanted a refund. She brought the associate to tears with her ranting and finally demanded the manager, my sister. Enter my sis, and the customer starts yelling at her too. My sis promptly tells the customer that her pants split because she was freaking fat. She wouldn't get a freaking refund, and to take her fat butt out of the store and never come back. Sis then went into the back, called her boss, and quit before she could be fired. Her boss actually was willing to let her stay, but she chose to leave anyway, until she could get her depression issues under control. Took a solid year, but she's much happier and healthier now. Oh, what's that? You think the customer's always right? Well, I got a manager who can tell you otherwise. I was a stocking assistant at a well-known fashion chain in the UK and US. Didn't go off on a customer, but I bloody well wish I did now. Happened to be behind tills changing hangers boxes when a customer explodes at a trainee cashier, demanding to know where her order was. She's screaming her head off and how it's unacceptable, I paid extra, and how she made a specific detour to collect her package. She had ordered a jacket in another branch and had paid for next day delivery to the store I worked in. Customers aren't supposed to come collect their orders until they get an email saying their order is ready to collect. The poor cashier started last week and is basically cowering for dear life. I take over and ask to see her email, which she explains she doesn't need because she paid extra, so her package must be here. After 10 minutes of me trying to explain why her package isn't ready to collect, and her trying to challenge Krakatoa, she storms off shouting that she'll be having words with the guy who owns our company. I hand back to the cashier and carry on with my day. The next day I'm prepping our delivery, and I get called for a meeting with the store manager. I'm told I'm being let go for gross misconduct, specifically being unhelpful and challenging to customers. Turns out the customer was a journalist for the Daily Mail, and she called our head of company, who she did indeed know personally and got me fired specifically. You gotta love modern day journalists, basically just glorified Facebook posters that think way too highly of themselves. This didn't happen to me, but I witnessed it. A friend of mine used to work in a pizza place. I'd hang out in the lobby playing their Pac-Man machine. Yeah, it was a long time ago. Anyway, my friend is taking orders when a guy storms in, screaming about wrong toppings. He removes the pie from the box and frisbees it into my friend's face. My two-dime Detroit Golden Gloves champion friend. What followed was the worst beating I've ever seen one man take. My friend lost a job and got jail time out of it. Oh yeah, I guess there are worse things than just getting fired. I didn't get fired, but got a written warning for this. I was working chat tech support for a web host. Customer chatted in, complaining of slowness, claiming our servers were having issues. I do all the standard steps, and we determine that his ISP is having issues. Standard tracer, etc. He doesn't believe me and becomes obstinate. So I end the chat by saying, "You're wrong." About 10 minutes later, I get a new chat. I see the account name and the question. It was the same guy with the same question. Without letting him say anything, I write, "You're still wrong," and close the chat. If I wasn't one of the better techs, I know I would have been fired. Yeah, that's the dream job. Find yourself so unreplaceable that you can do whatever you want and not worry about losing your job. Luckily, I didn't lose my job for this, as the manager on shift was pretty lenient and agreed with me. So I worked at a pretzel place where you hand make everything. I had just finished rolling and bounced over to the register to help out a customer. The lady asks, "Hi, can I get your salted nuggets? But are they fresh?" I knew for a fact they were. I had just rolled them myself and put them in the warmer. "Indeed, ma'am, I'd be happy to make you a fresher one if you want to wait 5 to 10 minutes. But I literally put these in here less than 5 minutes ago." She seemed happy and content. "Sure, I'll take those, thanks." Not even 5 minutes later, she comes back hollering at me that I'm a liar. That I must be stupid because the nuggets were hard. Which I knew she was the liar because I had just made everything. What gets me is she came back, even though she came back with less than half of the cup left. Must have been terrible, right? So after I get called a liar and a moron, and she had the audacity to demand a refund and new fresh nuggets another 3 times, I turned to a coworker and I said, which I quote, "Someone needs to help this bee because I'm not." Loud enough for her to hear, and I stormed out of the store to the back room to cool off. You know, I might have finally figured out why so many customer service jobs are kind of like on the bottom end of the job ladder. Maybe it's because people at that stage have a lot less to lose, and so they have a lot easier time just throwing their whole job away by blowing up on a customer. I had a customer that, for at least a year, came into our store and was a master tactician in getting free goods by making up complaints against our staff. He would always do sorts of maneuvers like wanting products he knew we didn't carry, to making up complaints about our staff, to even complaining that he had been charged incorrectly. If this guy was in the store, good luck if you were another customer. He would suck up all the oxygen in the place and demand service from multiple people at the same time. He got reduced prices and free merchandise and tons of coupons for his efforts. My boss would never challenge this guy or protect his own staff from being exposed to losing their job to a customer who would happily see a member of our crew fired so he could get $5 off his next purchase. My boss wasn't entirely at fault, since this was a giant corporation and he was merely towing the fabled "the customer is always right" mantra. I was already planning on leaving for a better opportunity and was going to give notice of resignation 1 week when this customer started giving me an incredibly difficult time about an issue I had nothing to do with and couldn't help him with. It was extremely busy and he was holding everyone up with his BS. I made a quick value judgment, realized I was already out the door, and the only thing I was still there to do was to honor my appropriate resignation notice. I had no designs of ever working for this horrible company, or any company like it ever again. I found myself in a unique situation and wasn't going to let the opportunity pass. The guy made life difficult for all of us for a long time. Payback time. I cut this guy off mid-sentence and just went off on him in front of a number of customers and part of our staff. I told him he was nothing more than a cheapskate grifter, and I told him I would no longer recognize him as a living, breathing member of our species. Then I told him to go F himself. The look on his face was so beautiful. The entire store fell into silence, and I just stared him down. He asked to speak to my manager, and I doubled down by talking over his head, inviting the customer behind him to elbow up to the counter. I apologized to the new customer about the bad behavior of the guy who, at this point, had steam coming out of his ears. Eventually, when he realized he was getting nowhere waiting on me, he stormed off to find a manager. I finished my shift, came back in the following day, was intercepted by a corporate manager I had rarely seen, taken upstairs and was getting lectured. I interrupted the scolding, revealed my intentions to leave this place, and quit right there. I got a lot of high fives from the other members of the staff on my way out the door. Well, that was a pretty fun story to end this on. You know, these stories were so long that I'm just going to have to make a part 2 of this video, so yeah, we're going to have a whole bunch more of these, maybe on Friday. You know, these stories kind of feel like this channel is going back to its roots, at least just for a couple days. So if you enjoy it, be sure to watch some more.